Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff. With me today, the Cuzzo Dan for episode 52.
52, huh? 52. I'll tell you, 52. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? Look at us.
Halfway to
You know,
100. We're at our midlife
I
crisis
mean,
here on the show.
God, I was just thinking about age too, like 52. God, what are we going to be like when we get to 50, 52 years old? I don't want to be some, angry grump who says, get off my lawn with the kids out there. But 52 to me sounds like that's kind of what you do, right? That sounds pretty old to me. And I mean, no offense to anyone who's 52 out there, but
Yeah, I mean when you hit the 50s, you start your kids are maybe going or they're wrapping up high school-ish or in high school and then, might be finishing up and then finishing up college in some cases, so
yeah, 52 though. Let's get back to the 52. I think you've got. Are we starting with that, or are we starting with
yeah.
the
Yeah,
other
I
one?
got you. All right. So as always, we always represent. We pay tribute to a couple 52s here on the show. So here's guess one for Dan over here. All right. So he's a pitcher. I think he's played
Okay.
for roughly three teams that I can think of off the top of my head. He's a Hall of Famer, two-time Cy Young pitcher, eight-time All-Star. He had a playoff no hitter and and just a perfect game in a different setting, regular season. He had 203 wins and a 3.8 ERA.
Hall of Fame pitcher, two Cy Youngs, eight All Stars. Did you say was he a recent player? Is he more of an old school guy?
90s,
90s.
2000s. He's dead now.
Oh, that should give it away. Is that? Are we talking Doc Holliday? Roy
Yes,
Halladay?
sir. And I think we did him for
Wow.
34. I want to say we did him for 34 too, or we just paid tribute to him at some point. But yeah, Roy Halladay, Philly. I mean, a lot. I remember him as a Blue Jay. I actually have a couple of his cards as a Blue Jay, and then I have him obviously as the Phillies too.
I was just gonna say, I first remember hearing the name when he was, in Toronto. They had him and AJ Burnett, I think, back in the day, and they both like back then they were young. They're coming up. They're like these guys have nasty stuff,
Carlos Delgado
and
was on one of those teams too.
oh, they had some dogs back in those days, and the uniforms weren't bad either. Now that I think about it,
No,
I think they were black, or they weren't bad. But Halliday, obviously known probably more for being a Philly than a Blue Jay, but um, especially with that World Series team that they were on. You talk about a guy that was, super dominant. Unfortunately, gone too soon, way too soon. But
yeah.
um,
I mean, I'm glad
a
he's a Hall
big
of
game
Famer though,
pitcher.
as he
Yeah,
should.
yeah. Two Cy Youngs, eight All Stars. How much
Yeah, he played
more, can you?
two
He
teams.
hit over 200 wins.
Yeah, that was that's a big accomplishment now is hitting that threshold. Got another one
Yeah,
for you
Halliday.
after we're done.
Okay, all right. What do we got?
All right, next one is he's a Hall of Famer. He's also a Cy Young winner, 2009 World Series champion, 251 career wins with a 3.74 ERA, ALCS MVP. And then this is the dead giveaway for you. So he's played for three different teams and he had one of the best stretches in a second half for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2008, where he went 11-2 with a 1.65 ERA.
I don't know if that would be this way or this way. That's CC. So Bathia. Yeah, when the Brewers, I remember when they got him at the deadline and he came over, that was one of the most dominant stretches of pitching I think I've ever seen. I mean,
Yeah,
you can talk regular season, you could talk playoffs with Mad Bomb a few years back when he was coming in and then coming out of relief and doing all that. But Sabathia, when they got him, it was basically a for sure win. I feel like he was going deep into those games. Um, a guy that some people weren't sure on with the Hall of Fame because his numbers are eerily similar to Andy Pettit. I think we might have talked about that, but you know, um, super dominant pitcher. I think you said 250 wins, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there. That's a ton of
251.
wins. I know people aren't looking at wins and losses that much anymore, but to win a game and to do it 250 times, 200 is a lot. Halliday, he had some good numbers for sure. Uh, CC though, man, he was, and I think people are going to know him as a Yankee. Obviously, I think he was on Cleveland too when he first came up, but
I didn't
yeah, hell of
realize
a
he
pitcher.
spent 11 seasons with the Yankees too.
Yeah, because I think he got the big contract, or if I'm not mistaken, I think he was paid fairly
Yeah,
handsomely to go over there.
yeah, because he was traded to Milwaukee in 2008. Which one note of that season too, he had 7 complete games in his 11 wins.
And I'm thinking back too. You said was it '07 or '08? You
Oh,
just said.
oh 08, yeah, 2008.
So either way, both years, you probably had Prince Fielder, I think, at that time still. You
Yep.
had Ryan Braun, who was still on top of the world. I think they had Corey Hart in right field, who was a solid player. They had some dogs over there.
Ricky Weeks, JJ
Ricky Weeks
Hardy,
too. Yeah. Oh
Jason
yeah, JJ
Kendall,
Hardy.
J-
Jason Kendall. I always liked him. He
and
was a
then
good catcher.
obviously your manager now, Craig Counsell, was on that team too.
That's my
I always liked
yeah.
Craig Counsell too, but yeah, that team was just, I mean, they didn't end up doing anything that year. I don't even know. They finished second. They lost in divisional round to the Phillies. I think the Phillies ended up going to the World Series that year. Um,
That sounds about right.
yeah, just didn't. Yeah, pretty good. But
Good
yeah, and
team from
obviously,
Milwaukee, but you ran into a juggernaut those couple of years with the Phillies with all those guys on them. So
yeah, right. I mean, that was a fun. If you think about it, though, that's a fun matchup to look back at with like,
yeah,
you had, like you said, Prince Fielder, and then you had Ryan Howard, Chase Utley. Like, also, I don't remember Chase Utley being this hated player back when he was like early on. I think that was like when he was more old and crotchety, just going after people's like kneecaps.
he was I thought a pretty beloved player because he was one of like the
Yeah.
main fixtures in that Phillies team for
Right.
probably about a decade or so, and you can't forget J. Roll, Jimmy Rollins, and then you had Jason Worth. His hair and his beard just kept growing. And one little note on Jason Worth, he
Yeah.
owns a horse. I don't know if you remember seeing that with he was in the Kentucky Derby or whatever.
It sounds right. I feel like I've heard that as well.
You got to look up his picture now. I mean, he is a reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Oh, jeez.
Look up that picture of him at the Kentucky Derby or whatever when you get some time. It'll give you a good laugh.
Oh yeah, I'll have to. But yeah, so and obviously we're just going to touch on him. Pay honor and tribute to the one notorious number 52 from the NFL, the Baltimore Raven, Ray Lewis. You have to give him his honorable mention on there just because of how dominant he was.
I don't know how many people watch the Gabagools podcast. I think I've seen we've been climbing, so I don't want to offend
Yeah.
anybody here, but I'm pretty sure he killed a guy. So, you talk about a
Allegedly,
guy that is
alleged. Everything's allegedly.
yeah.
Allegedly, we're
Like,
past the statute of
you know,
limitations.
he was killing people on and off the field, is basically what we're trying to say. I don't know if he was an Aaron Hernandez, but,
Who knows?
let's get
Uh,
back on track, Dan.
Yeah, we got to jump on track. On that note, we're gonna jump into the NL East, and this is actually one of my favorite divisions.
Agreed.
Jeez. Just
Yeah.
going right off the rails, and I knew it was gonna happen too. And I'm like, we'll just see what happens. Just blew up. But obviously, let's jump into the NL East. It's one of my favorite divisions to watch because of the competitiveness up to above the top teams. And oh wait, no, we have to go back. Let's go back before we. No, we'll keep going. I'll touch on the Blackhawks trade later. Um, so we'll jump in with Atlanta. Obviously, this is one of the more dominant divisions because you have the Mets, Phillies, Atlanta, Washington is on the up and up, and Miami, who knows what the hell they're doing. But
Yeah.
let's jump in with the Atlanta Braves. They're projected 93 wins. That sounds about right in that division. What they added in free agency this year to note would be Jerickson Profar, but they lost Max Fried to the Yankees, traded away Jorge Soler. Travis D'Arnaud is with the Angels. Charlie Morton is with the Orioles. And then a couple of free agent pitchers. So lost a lot, but you would think they would skip a beat. No, their core is signed for like the next 5 years. And jumping in with their pitchers as well. Chris Sale, Spencer Strider at some point this year, Reynaldo Lopez, Spencer Swelenbach, and Grant Holmes are the projected 5 for their starters.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you said, the last couple years, it's been for the NL East, it's been, Atlanta and Philly. And, we've got a couple other teams that we're going to talk about. We'll start with Atlanta, obviously, but, they got a great infield. I think the catcher, Sean Murphy, unfortunately, might have just went down with a little injury in spring training. But assuming, you're going to have him for the most of the year, he's a great catcher. Matt Olson, obviously, at first, Ozzie at second. You got Riley at third, and then Orlando Arcia at short. You got one of the best infields, not only in the National League, but in all of baseball right there. And, Acuna, you're going to get him back at some point. I don't know if he's going to be ready for opening day, but
I don't think so. I think he's going to be out for at least a little bit.
they'll probably take it easy with him, too, because I think this is the second time he's tore that, right?
I don't know if it's the same one or not, but I know he's torn his ACL twice, which, at some point they're going to have that discussion whether or not they have him move positions too. So we'll see about that. Strider, Murphy, and Acuna probably being out maybe the first month, like give or take. A lot of guys are going to have to step up. I know in our Dynasty League, I picked up Drake Baldwin, who's the kind of top prospect catcher for that organization. So pretty excited about him. He'll take over. But you have Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Albies. With that core, it's insane. And then you have Arcia, who still does his damage as well. But throwing Profar into that mix with Jared Kelenic and Michael Harris, too. He's a young gun who had kind of I feel like he had a bad season last year. Like it wasn't like I don't know if he got hurt too, and that could be why, but I felt like he just was non-existent. But, last but not least, because the DH, which is awesome, you have, Marcell Ozuna, who just tore the cover off the ball. Got hurt. I don't think he got hurt. It's just he slowed down near the end of the year, so the Braves couldn't really do too much, but it's still the Braves.
It's still the Braves. They've been
one of the more well-rounded organizations too. Top prospects. They were bad. Well, not really bad, but like when they were kind of rebuilding too all those years ago, I remember they were up top the prospect pool with the Sox, and there was a lot of back and forth which I don't know why, but a lot of back and forth of the Braves fans about whose prospects were better. And at the time, Sox had the top ranked farm system back in like 2015, 2016. They all got hurt, and obviously we see the Braves win a World Series in that time. So,
yeah, you know what it's been this way the last couple of years when you look at Atlanta's roster, right? I mean, they've got depth in the starting pitching. The infield's great. I love, just like you said, with the addition to Profar, with the year he's had. Profar the last 2 or 3 years has been starting to swing a better bat. So, you add him out there, obviously with Acuna and Harris. They're a deep team. The bullpen is solid. They've been pretty much, I think, the favorites to win that division the last couple of years. And then, you've got a couple other teams now in that division that are, have gotten better or are knocking on the door. So that's why this division is so exciting yet again.
Yeah, and you know what? The next team that I do like the Braves though. Like I will say that. They're a team that just is fun to watch. I watched them a lot last year or 2 years ago when all they would do is like they had that streak of home runs and it was just exciting baseball to watch. And I don't know if it's because like being a Sox fan, the games have been so boring. Like you would just go in there and just be like, wow, I'm watching paint dry. And then like the Braves, it's exciting, making good defensive plays, hitting, catching, whatever. It's amazing the culture difference. So, but moving into the other team that I would love to be a fan of is the Phillies. They're just a bunch of, money spenders for that organization, and they kind of know what they're doing for the most part. Had a World Series appearance 2 years ago, I believe it was, and then obviously lost in, I think, the NLCS last year, yeah?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I mean the Phillies. It's they're like it's like 1A 1B right now with Atlanta and Philly. I mean it's so tough to pick which one you like. I mean Atlanta it's tough to not pick them, but the Phillies. You start looking at who they have. You look at their infield right now. You got you still have JT behind the plate. I think they're going to try to play him a little more at first in DH this year, but you're still going to have him probably catch about 100 games or more. You got Bryce at first base. If Freddie's the number one first baseman in the league, Bryce very well might be number two. Olson's in
Yep.
that conversation as well. Bryson Stott is a nice player at second. You got Bomer at third, who's been hitting the ball pretty well, and then Trey Turner is obviously Trey Turner, and then you still got Schwarby, who's coming off of one of his best
Yeah.
career years. So offensively, you start looking at all these pieces for both teams, and you're like, who's got the real advantage there? They're
Yeah.
very well put together teams.
Absolutely. It's kind of fun to watch them too. I think they had a playoff matchup like 2, 3 years ago too, which was fun to watch. I do have to ask you, knowing that the Cubs let Schwarber walk for like over like $7 million, and then he's had a nice career, probably the best career out of all the core from the
Of everyone
26.
who left, yeah, agreed.
How
Does
much
it
does that?
sting?
Yeah, how much does that one hurt?
Well, we've been to a Cubs game or two. You've seen me wear the
Yeah,
vintage Schwarber jersey, so that should tell you how that makes me feel. He
I've
was
always
my
been a fan
guy.
of
Him
his
and
too.
Rizzo were my two guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm. Oh,
and
do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Schwarber is a guy that the last couple years, he's been hitting a lot of homers, strikes out a lot, but he also walks
Yeah,
a lot too. But the average has been really low. This last year, I forget where the average was, but it was at least 30, 40, 50 points higher than the last couple of years. So you
yeah,
add that in with
248
him
last year.
walking. I mean, you hit 250 along with. I think he hit almost 40 last year. Was it 39? I mean, he had a
30,
very good year
38
last year.
homers, and like you said, he walked 106 times, which that was like it wasn't his career high, but he's averaging it out a lot better compared to what he was. So,
Yeah,
adding in the home runs, that's incredible.
it helps average out some of those strikeouts too, because he's going to strike out close to about 200 times, and he could
Yeah.
strike out more than 200 times, which is terrifying. But you're going to walk 100 times or more and hit 250, about 40 bombs. That's
You
still a pretty darn good year.
Yeah, and you have to obviously account for his June months are just like
Oh yeah,
historical. If you
they're
go
unbelievable.
For all those listeners, go out there and look at his June numbers compared to the rest of the season. It's night and day. I think it's June
He
or it could be
might be
July.
the best player in the history of the sport in the month of June.
Yeah, I mean you're not wrong. I think they compared it to like Barry Bonds. Like somebody else like had such an
Might even be
incredible.
better than Bonds in the month. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I don't have those specific numbers comparable, but
Yeah,
I know his
yeah.
month. Like, let's see if I can find it while we continue to talk. But like, looking at the Phillies just as a whole, really tough. Nice core, kind of on the older side, obviously with that team. Mid 30 or 30s. We'll see what they end up doing as a with this year with their hitters because you never know because a lot of those guys get hurt. Harper was banged up a little bit last year. JT I think had a horrible year. So if they can all put it together, Bohm really did pick up the slack last year, and he was on the trade block this year. So you know, you'll have to see what ends up coming from all that nonsense. Plus, they have an incredible pitching staff too. We didn't even touch on that yet. And it got better because they traded for Jesus Luzardo, who's probably their 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. I was just going to say, like, when you're just talking about those, Atlanta and Philly, when you compare the two, I think the biggest differences are the outfield. And then, honestly, I think Philly's rotation might be better than Atlanta's. I mean, that might be the best rotation in all of baseball if they stay healthy. Um,
I've heard you say
Wheeler,
that a couple
Nola,
times so far on these previews here.
they're they're unbelievable. I mean, Wheeler and Nola are
Yeah,
great. I mean, like you said, Lazardo fits right in there. Ranger's been great. That Sanchez kid who came up, I think his name's Chris or something like
Christopher.
that. He was great. And you still also have that Andrew Painter in the minors. I mean, is he going to
Yeah.
come up this year? Maybe. The depth's crazy. Their bullpen's still solid. I mean, they got a guy in Jordan Romano who's probably not going to be their closer, who's been a closer, who's probably going to be, maybe a 6, 7, 8 guy in their bullpen. So,
Yeah,
um,
it'll be
yeah,
tough. I mean, it's gonna be either him or Jose Alvarado, who
Alvarado, yeah.
if you remember him with the Rays, he was nails and pretty much been nails everywhere he's gone. So, yeah, I mean, their weak spot is obviously outfield, but they brought in Max Kepler this year. Brandon Marsh still there. That's another guy that looks like Jason Worth, and then Castellanos, who you can never count out of having a decent year and something bad happening every time he hits a home run.
Yes, that is quite the phenomenon. And Brandon Marsh, the comparison to Worth, that's a little what I would compare him more to the Geico caveman.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. So they're also projected for the Pacoda only 85 wins.
You know, it's so interesting because I think Atlanta's been the favorite the last couple of years, and then Philly kind of flipped it on them. I think last year, and Atlanta had that kind of weird off year, but 2 years ago Atlanta had that monster year where everybody was hitting 40 or 50 homers and stealing
Yeah.
70 bags. So
We'll
we'll
see
see
what
what
happens this
Atlanta's
year.
like this
Yeah.
year, and Philly too. Yeah, that might be a little low, but we'll see.
Yeah. Moving into the team that also likes to spend money with Uncle Steve Cohen here, the New York Mets. How about that? They bring in Juan Soto, re-sign Pete Alonso, bring in Clay Holmes and make him a starter. Sean Manaea re-signed, Frankie Montas, Jesse Winker, Jose Siri, Ryan Stanek, for just to mention a few of them. They got rid of Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, Harrison Bader, and Adam Ottavino. Um, you know, that team's gonna be deadly.
Yeah,
When we break down their five or their infield as well, it is just like three juggernauts in one division. It's so much fun to watch. So obviously you have Francisco Alvarez behind the plate, who he's good for 20 something home runs. He's a young guy. You got Pistol Pete at first, or the polar bear. Got Jeff McNeil, who's an average guy. Mark Vientos, young guy who could probably split time with Brett Beatty this year. So we'll see what happens between that and spring. And then obviously Frankie Lindor, who just has made a nice career for himself as well. Almost had an MVP season last year, I'd say.
yeah. People were mentioning him, as one of the front runners for MVP. He did have a great year. McNeil, I heard something about this recently that he put on. I think he put on a couple pounds of muscle, or I think he might be changing his bat too. So I think towards the second half of last year, he was hitting for more power. They think that maybe he'll do that a little bit more. Still a great hitter, great player. Pete, you know what? He's been maybe trending down a little bit the last couple years, but he's still good for probably at least 30 and 90, 30, 100. And if he has a big year, which he's easily capable of, he could hit you 40 or 50. So yeah,
One note, one
it's
note
a
on that
deadly.
before we move on with it too. The mention on Pete, he's got the best probably player either in front of him or in back of him now with Juan Soto. So he's only going to progress even more and have a better season because it's either you pitch to him or you pitch to Juan Soto, and I think a lot of teams are going to take him over Soto personally.
Oh, well, I wouldn't go as far to say a lot of teams. I'd go as far to say every team. Pete needs to understand that, he's Soto's going to strike out a little bit, but he takes a ton of walks and has a terrific eye, and everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Pete doesn't have as good of an eye, no offense, and he's going to strike out more. So, yeah, he's a much easier out, no offense. And that's the guy you got to go after. No offense, Pete. You got 50 million compared to 760 or whatever the hell it was. There's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, 30, good for
Still
about
like you,
30
but
good. Yeah, good for about 34 home runs a year too. And it's funny though cuz you look at his RBI numbers last year, he only had 88 RBIs and he played 162 games. So that means that nobody got on
yeah.
base for him, so but yeah, I mean,
Or he's not getting a bunch of hits that are just driving guys in. And when he's
right.
hitting homers, he's driving in his runs.
And then obviously in the outfield, you got Nemo, Tyron Taylor slash Jose Siri, Starling Marte still farting around over there, Jesse Winker, and then Juan Soto.
Yeah, you know what? I still look at the Mets and say that they're a little behind the first two teams we mentioned. I
Yeah,
mean, yes, you have Soto, but I mean, Nimmo I like, but I don't love. I'll be perfectly honest with you. There's better guys on the other teams in their outfield, and he's still a nice player. The other guys they have are nice compliments, but it's Soto and the other guys right now. And like I said, Nimmo's solid.
do you know what's
Um,
funny is they're projected 91 wins too.
You know what? And that's I think your Soto effect. And then they brought, like you said, they brought Pete back. So now you're looking at that lineup going Lindor, Pete, Soto. If McNeil and Vientos and Alvarez all pitch in, you got at least six guys deep right there.
Yeah,
Um, the starting pitching too is a little. I don't think it's as good as the other two teams. You got Senga to start it off. You got Clay Holmes. We'll see how he can transition to being a starter now. I like him. I think he's got great stuff, but we'll see. David Peterson had a real. I think he had a nice year last year, but are we really that high on David Peterson? Sorry, Dave or David. Davey, whatever you go by. You got Canning and Blackburn right now that are going to be in there because Minaya and Montas are out. I forgot about Minaya, but I still, I feel like the rotation lacks a little something that the other teams have in that division.
yeah. I think they're going to have some rookie pitchers come up. Brandon Sprout is one of them. I don't know if you know anything about him, but he's
I've got him in one of our leagues, I think.
nice. Yeah, he's going to be good. He came up kind of on the scene last year too, and then obviously Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning. So, like you said, it's not going to knock you off your feet because a lot of those guys are injury prone as well. Um, they all kind of put together nice seasons and could if they score enough runs, but that's a weak spot, which I think they still need to add to. They gave a lot of guys that are hurt money, so we'll see. But Clay Holmes, the transition from a
We'll
closer
see.
role into a starter, that'll be fun. It's not
We'll see.
crazy. I mean, we saw it with Garrett
Yeah,
Crochet, so
we just saw it with Jordan Hicks too. I mean, San
yeah.
Fran just kind of started doing that. I don't know if I think he's still starting, but yeah, I mean, people are trying to do that. We'll see.
Yep. Anything else on the Mets?
The bullpen, the last part. I don't know.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
is their bullpen that good? Edwin Diaz, yeah, the trumpeter. There you go. You still have Edwin. I think they added AJ Minter, and you mentioned Ryan Stanek. So they got a couple guys down there. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think 91 wins. I would have maybe given that to the Phillies, and I would have given
Yeah,
uh,
kind of
the Phillies
surprising.
had 89. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know where the projection came from.
the Soto effect.
Yeah, or they just see how bad Miami is too. So
Could be. Yeah.
moving into the Washington Nationals first, kind of the young guns of this one. Not really a deep
I,
pitching
I
staff.
like Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna be fun. They're gonna be fun to watch. Gonna have to stream them a
Not
couple
this
times.
year, but yeah.
Obviously, with their starting pitching, that Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, Trevor Williams, Mike Soroka, former White Sox, and then Mitchell Parker. Kyle Finnegan got re-signed for their closer, and just a bunch of other guys that nobody really cares about. I mean, Lucas Sims, nice ad. Derek Law, Colin Pache, Jorge Lopez. So better than it's been in the past. But let's just break it down.
I'm scrolling through here, and we have Washington. So I just said I like Washington. I do. I like some of their young players a lot, and I think that they've found some people that are going to be there, hopefully for them for a while. Washington knows how to draft, and when
Yeah,
they
they
make a trade to acquire young talent, usually those guys will pan out too. I mean, just to name a few, they drafted, as you know, Strasburg, Harper. Did they draft Soto?
yeah
I think
they
Soto came
signed him
up with
out of
them. I mean,
and
obviously Ryan Zimmerman going back a few more years, but you know, the pitching. I'll be honest with you. I don't love the pitching, but
No.
I'm just looking at their outfield. I seriously think, at least in that division, that could be the second best outfield at the end of the year in that division. I don't love.
We'll take. I like it though.
Um, it's interesting. You know, you got obviously Dylan Cruz and James Wood are your two big guys. If those kids both pan out, which they look like they're going to, they're going to be great. Jacob Young, I think, had a decent year last year. I'd have to see, but you know, they've got some good young talent over there, and it's going to be another year or two, couple years, and it's the toughest part for them is their own division because of, you know, Atlanta and Philly and the Mets. You got a couple juggernauts over there, but they got some really fun, good-looking young pieces.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch them. Like you said, Cruz and Wood are kind of like the focal points of that team. Obviously, C.J. Abrams at shortstop. They brought in
Love
Paul
CJ.
Young. Trey Lipscomb has been kind of around too. He's been a prospect. Ahmad Rosario. Second base, Luis Garcia had a nice year, kind of an
He
average
did.
guy.
Yep.
And then they brought back Josh Bell, and then they have Nathaniel Lowe.
Yeah, not Nate. Don't call him Nate.
No, apparently that is actually a thing. And then Keibert Ruiz, who's been pretty solid behind the plate too.
You know, just real quick on the Nathaniel, just going back to that, because I'm a Dan, right? And
Yeah,
obviously the full name for everyone who doesn't know the full name of Dan is Daniel. And I've never been a Daniel, right? Came out of the womb, sorry, mom, as a Dan. And that's just how it's been. Some people are Danny, Daniel. I
Danny
could
Boy.
never do the Daniel. So for Nate to go by Nathaniel, hey,
Some
more
people
props
like
to
it.
you.
Yeah, more power to you is right.
Some people like it.
I don't know. Yeah, they're going to be rounded out at 68 wins. I could see it going plus minus, depending on, like you said, Wood and Cruz kind of stepping up, and if Abrams can get out of the casino at like
Casino,
six.
yeah.
Yeah,
Still
I was
had a
wondering.
really nice year for someone who's, you know, going to the casino and staying out till 6 a.m. I mean, the guy still had a pretty good year.
Well, it's funny because it was one of your Cubby Bear reporters who leaked the story on Twitter, which then it got a bunch of steam going. So
I didn't love that because I've got him in one or two leagues, and
yeah,
when that happened, I had to pull him out of the lineup, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Who cares? The kid's having a good year. He's super young. I think he's still only like 22 or 23. Like, give him a break.
right.
I mean, he
It's
didn't kill
insane.
anybody. Where's the fire?
Right. I agree.
Unbelievable. It's no Ray Lewis.
Unbelievable. And this team, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on because they're just so,
No, this will
being a
be quick.
Sox fan, we have our problems, but Miami is just one big dumpster fire after another. Uh, Projected at 60 wins, so more than my White Sox, but at least we have a
I might
direction.
take the under.
Yeah, that one I would 100% take the under as well. Um, they had more departures than they did acquisitions. I don't think they spent $1 in free agency personally. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but their pitchers, the bright spot. They have some nice pitching. I will give them that. Sandy's good. Ryan Weathers is kind of that fringe. Could be really good. Could be really bad. Edward
Mm-hmm.
Cabrera can't really put it together. They brought in Cal
Yeah, throw
Quantrill.
some strikes.
Yeah, no kidding. And then Max Meyer, who came up last year, who was awesome, and then they limited his innings. So let's see if they unleash him. Their bullpen, we obviously do not need to talk about because that's a rotating door. Moving into
I
their
did the who again.
yeah.
We'll go
Who?
there.
Who?
Okay, who? The who.
And then obviously Nick Fortes at catcher. Don't know who that is. Matt Mervis, former Cub, should get a nice look there at first base. Otto Lopez, never heard of that guy. Connor Norby, know him because he came from the Baltimore system. Xavier Edwards, he came from Tampa. I know he's pretty solid. Kyle Stowers, another Baltimore Oriole. Dane Myers, don't know much about him. Jesus Sanchez is nice pop, but he's not very good. And then Jonah Bride, not looking too hot. One guy to look at, though, is De Los Santos. He's a prospect. Should be pretty decent for him because we have to say one nice thing.
You know what? Yeah. Yeah, this is it. If you are a Miami Marlin fan, and I know there aren't many out there, you're not looking forward to this year yet again, you know. And if you
Nope.
go back just a couple years ago, right, you had one of the better outfields in all of baseball. I think you had Stanton, Yelich, and I think Marcelo Zuna was over there. Now
Yep.
you fast forward a few years, they're all on different teams, all doing pretty well. And you know, the big loss is obviously a couple years ago with Jose Fernandez. You had if you would have had him and Sandy pitching right now with a 1 and 2, that could be the best 1-2 in the game if they, you know, if he was still with us. So, you know, you lost a lot with not keeping, you know, I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, I mean, yeah, Otto Lopez. I mean, that reminds me of that cartoon Rocket Power. I think it was back in the day. The kid's name was Otto.
Yeah.
Like,
Good
who's
one.
named Otto anymore? Yeah, it's a good name, but you know, I mean, not really. Uh, Xavier Edwards. I think he had a halfway decent
Yeah.
campaign last year. So, you know, we'll see. Connor Norby, I think he's a young kid, so he needs to figure something out. But yeah, I mean, Matt Mervis, the ex-Cub, he gets an everyday job. We'll see what he can do.
Yeah. Couldn't hold down first base though. So we'll see.
No,
We'll see what he ends
yeah,
up
we'll see.
being. Just
Shit.
an ugly team. Decent pitching. Couple of good building blocks there. Um, not a lot of good stuff going on there for the Miami Marlins.
It's going to be a
Like I
rough
said,
year, Miami.
yeah, good pitching prospects though. Also, Robbie Snelling. I think they got him a part of Padres deal for Arraez, so could be nice.
Could
Anything
be.
else on the NL East before we close out that one?
Are we making our picks right now, or?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I need like 10 seconds, so I'm actually going to pass this one over to you. I'll let you take the reins here. Who are you going with?
I'm going with the Phillies. Phillies, I like their pitching staff a little bit more. Obviously Atlanta's going to be neck and neck with them, but I'm going to take the Phillies to win the division.
All right, I will, just to be different, I will take Atlanta.
Yeah, it's a tough decision because both are really solid.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Perfect. All right, and then let's close it out on a positive note. In the west side of Chicago with our, United Center team, we're not talking about the Bulls, the Blackhawks. Made a trade 2 days ago. I don't know if you saw it. They acquired Spencer Knight and a conditional 2026 first round pick for Seth Jones, and we retained 25% of the salary from Jones. He was a defenseman. He wanted to go to a contender. He sent to Florida. Good for him. Kind of a thorn in the sides for the Hawks just because of where they're at with their rebuild. Criticized the team quite a bit, so kind of getting that toxic presence out of the locker room, I'm perfectly fine with. And we got Spencer Knight, who is our franchise goalie, who's a 23-year-old. He was a top, I want to say like top 10 pick, we'll say, a couple years ago. He was a part of the team last year that won the Stanley Cup, which is good. So he's got some playoff experience. He only went 1-1. So he didn't really get a whole lot of time, but he is a 2021 World Junior gold medalist. So he's got some, high level hockey, tournament, or not knowledge, but experience. So you like that. You like getting a franchise goalie. Check that off the list. And the good thing about Jones leaving is that we have a lot of space to put some of these young prospects that we have up on the Hawks. So took away from a point of depth and got a really good goalie out of it. So I'm really excited. And he did play last night.
So it sounds like the Blackhawks are on the up and up then, right?
In theory, I like this move a lot. Like I said, he went in and played last night, and he made 41 saves. They won 5-1. You can't ask for a better situation because he was so he was the number 13th pick in the 2019 draft. But for 23-year-old who's got 5 shutouts and 80 regular season games, I'll take it.
Now, real quick, what's the most important position on the ice? Is it goalie?
That's tough. I like a good defenseman because if we can lock it down on the back end, they can also score. So that's a big one in my opinion. But obviously, having a goalie is huge. You have to have a goalie. So I would say, yeah, you're right. having a goalie will make things a lot better for them. And then now we have we have a added cap space, still have a ton of first round picks coming up in the next couple of years. So, looking at, they are on the up and up. So we might see 2 years from now, the Hawks kind of make a playoff run, depending on how we do this next offseason.
You know what? Chicago sports, it's always better when we're in the playoffs. You could probably say that for every city's sports teams, but you know what? We're a big city. We love our sports teams, and when we're in the playoffs, we like to get out there and show our support. So let's do something, huh? Cubs this year. What do we think? Huh? Come on, Blackhawks, couple years.
Couple years, Bears next year? Question mark?
Jeez, man. Let's not even, let's hold up on that.
They still have a good chance. I mean, Ben Johnson is there for a reason.
Benny boy. Yeah, and he's probably listening too. So, if you are listening, Benjamin, do you go by Ben? Is it Benjamin? No, we're on the Full Name podcast today with Nathaniel. So, Benjamin.
Nathaniel, Daniel, Jeffrey. Let's go.
Yeah. Benjamin. Sir Benjamin.
Sir Benjamin. I don't think he's knighted.
Figure some things out, sir.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy.
any closing notes for the podcast, or should we end on that note?
52. 52. Who would have thought? 53 next week.
Yep. Thank you to all of our 1 or 2 listeners that we have on a weekly basis. I appreciate you. Peace out.